50 charges, 10 years each. 500 years in federal prison he was facing, and he was only 18 years old. One kid, one payphone, one whistle, and he helped break AT&T wide open from a community pool over in California. And here's what nobody tells you about my next guest. The tactics that John Young used in the NIST, social engineering, pretexting, those same tactics are now the backbone of organized cybercrime. The only difference between then and now, John was doing it for free long distance calls. Today, they're doing it for your entire bank account. He thought it was a bloodless crime, no victim, no harm. Then the FBI knocked on his grandmother's door. Twice. Those long distance calls, they were to his grandmother because he missed her. What happened next didn't scare him away from cybersecurity. It built the man who became one of only 11 people on Earth certified in all cybersecurity ISC2 disciplines. And he's about to tell you exactly why he did it. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and now the show. Very good. All right. Welcome, everybody, to Cybercrime Junkies. I am your host, David Dean Morrow, and in the studio today is John Young, one of the podcast's very first supporters, a good friend. He has returned. John has been in cybersecurity since before most of us knew the internet existed. And today he's one of only 11 people on the planet certified in all 9 ISC2 disciplines, which is remarkable. And he's also serves as the COO of Quantum Emotion America. John, welcome back to Cybercrime Junkies Studio, my friend. I'm really excited to have you here.
Thanks, David. It's an honor to be here with you again. It's been, 3-4 years?
Yeah.
You guys have done an incredible job.
We've been busy.
Gotta give you your props and flowers on that.
Yeah, well, thanks. So you have a remarkable career, and I want to ask you a couple questions about it. Back in the day, now we talked about this in one of our very first episodes because you were one of our very first guests. And for those who don't rewind that far back, because there's like 800 of them and stuff, you tell us about the story. Like, you hacked AT&T as a teenager, and then the FBI showed up.
Yeah, it's a crazy story.
Most people would walk away from that experience wanting nothing to do with cybersecurity, and you walked right toward it. So tell us about what flipped there, and tell us about the event. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, I'll give you a little background. There was a guy I grew up with who had to be one of the sneakiest people I've ever met. He would figure out every way to cut a corner, to get an edge, to do something. And he was able to, at 16, make old man voices and trick people with social engineering. And so I was like an equal with him. I was a couple of years younger, but I was a little behind, intellectually and knowing all what's right and wrong and all of this. I just kind of followed him. So we grew up in the same block in Astoria, Queens, in New York. His name was D.F. Rooney, Dennis Rooney. He unfortunately passed away a few months ago, but he's the one that figured it all out. I mean, he was literally a pioneer in social engineering. What we did, I had 3 different ways that I could basically get free phone calls. People say, who cares? Free phone calls. Well, in those days...
Back in the day, that was a lot of money. That was a big deal, right?
Yeah, if you called the next town over, it could be $10 for a 10-minute call. Forget about calling across the United States. And we were active 1973 through 1977. So I'd read this article about phone phreaks, and I'd kind of talked to him about that. And Dennis man, that guy was amazing in certain things. He really wasn't computer literate, but I actually did an interview with him before he died, and I asked him what he would do if he was in this kind of situation now. He said all the things that would absolutely make a successful hacker, as
Oh
far
my
as he'd
God.
go in there with pizza boxes and a hat, he'd grab
Right.
laptops, he'd look
Yeah.
under keyboards for passwords, he'd do a distraction. So he was very amazing. We actually came between like Steve Wozniak and Captain Crunch, and then Kevin Mitnick came like 10,
Right.
15 years after us. We were already completely done with it. And you said some
Unbelievable.
people would walk away. Well, what happened was two FBI agents with the full-on white shirts, black ties, 6-footers showed
Yeah.
up at my 4'11" Irish grandmother's place in New York, asking who was making tens of thousands of dollars of calls from California to New York. And my grandmother just said she was lonely, and she talked to anybody. She had that gift of gab. She could
Of
literally get a
course.
whole elevator of people talking or a
Right.
bus of, she was really a special person. So at that point, while we were in California, one of the people that lived in the area said, "Hey, the FBI has sent a team here, and they're knocking on the doors saying who's making all these unbillable calls from California to New York using the community pool and the grocery store and all of this." And I immediately backed off and said, "Wow, this is a sure way to go to prison," because they said, when we were in New York, it wasn't that big a deal. It was just fraud, making calls. But once we crossed state lines, that became interstate theft of services,
Right.
which
And now
carried
let's just, for everybody listening or watching, let's check this out for a second. The FBI showed up with like multiple
twice,
people.
at least
So
twice. Yeah.
yeah, so this was a big deal back then. Like today, with everything going on, we can't even imagine the FBI showing up for something like this. But this was big back then because just think about it. Like everybody would. It was so expensive to communicate back then. I mean, it was a big deal, and people were always trying to get around it.
Yeah, I was actually an accidental criminal. I thought it was a
Yeah.
bloodless crime. I
Right.
didn't realize the havoc we were wreaking
Yeah.
on the businesses where we were charging these calls to. Like one was a toy store, another was a butcher shop, and the administrative costs must have drove AT&T crazy.
Yeah.
So I actually had three ways to do it. I had the whistle from, you could blow on a whistle and get the tone from a payphone. That was well documented. The second
Yeah.
was social engineering, which Dennis was so great at, and he basically taught me how to do it so well too. The
How
third
would you
way
do
was
that? Tell us about how that would work. Like just a sample one.
all right. So in those days, this was in 1973. There were no answering machines. There was no cell
Right.
phones. There was nothing, right?
And you were
So
a kid.
we would
You were a
call
kid.
pay. We'd set up a meeting like with our friends on the East Coast and us on the West Coast. Would say, okay, we'll call you 7 o'clock Eastern time to this payphone. It was a very organized thing we had going, and we would stay on the phone for an hour, at a time, which was crazy in those days. So
Mm-hmm.
we'd set this up, and then we'd call collect to that payphone and want to charge it to our home phone, right? We'd say we'd like to do a collect call, and they'd say that's not allowable. It's to a payphone, and we'd say, well, I'll charge it to my home phone then. And the operator should have disconnected immediately. That was the protocol, just not
Right.
even talk anymore. But sometimes they would do it. So what we would do is give this toy store's number. They were closed at 6 o'clock. So the operator would call and call, it would ring, ring, and they'd just put us through. So this literally happened hundreds of times over the years. So the FBI had said, it was 10 years for each charge against us. And they said, they didn't know my name, but they said I had at least 50 charges against
Oh
me.
my God. So that,
So,
holy cow.
yeah.
That
So
is
I couldn't
like,
do 500 years, at
oh
18.
my gosh. Right.
So
For
right now
making
I could,
phone calls.
for
For like,
making phone
for
calls
like
that,
wanting to talk to your friends for an hour. That's
yeah. Yeah,
crazy.
well, what blew it up for me was my grandmother that I mentioned. I was dialing her number directly. So they were able to just go right
They
to
were able
her
to tie it.
house, and yeah, it was a
Yeah.
big mess. She stopped answering the phone, wouldn't answer I really regret that part of it because I didn't, she was
Yeah.
my
You didn't want to
favorite person
bring
in the
that.
world.
Right. Of
Yeah,
course. You
she was
didn't
my
want to
number
bring
one
that.
person in my life.
Yeah.
So that's why I was calling her. I really
Right.
missed her. And,
Exactly.
she was my biggest fan. So anyway, in this situation, right, you can go one of two ways. Like you said, you can lean into it and go that way, or you could walk away from it completely. So what I did is what a lot of security experts have done. People say my life reminds them of Catch Me If You Can
Mm-hmm.
with Leonardo DiCaprio, where the FBI hired him and this and that. Well, no one was hiring me because they couldn't catch us, right?
Right.
We kind of stopped what we were doing. We cooled it off once we got and as you mentioned, there was a lot of stuff going on then. Nixon had just retired.
Right.
Uh, the cities, we think we have a lot of political unrest now. I
Oh no,
used to
there
be
was the
scared
Watts
just,
riots
yeah.
that had happened shortly before then. Like there was a lot of things that were going on.
Yeah, I mean, Patty Hearst, bank
Right.
robberies,
Yep.
buildings blowing up, the Weathermen, the move in
Yep.
Philadelphia. So
Yep.
right now, people are complaining about the violence and this and that,
It's been
which is
going on
bad
since I was
enough.
born. Yeah, it's been going
But
on since
yeah,
I was a kid.
yeah,
Yeah.
in the 60s, 70s
Right.
was a big deal. So it was really small potatoes, I think, to the FBI to chase
Right.
whoever this was. They made a good effort. They came out a
Well,
few
they didn't have
times.
divisions either. They didn't have like a cybercrime division. There was no such thing then, right? And
No
so
computers.
right. There really was. They weren't equipped or staffed right with protocols and policies and equipment and technologies to really be doing.
Oh, they would
It
have
was
caught us
just
so quick if they if
right.
we would have did what
Exactly.
we did now, we wouldn't have even lasted a few weeks if they really wanted to get us. It would have
Yeah.
been very easy. But this was, you know, 8, 9, 10 years before PCs were
Right.
even invented, right?
Yeah.
Like, so there was no internet. You had mentioned that I was there before the internet. I actually was one of the first people that was on the ARPANET. There was very
Wow.
few of the
The
predecessor to
original.
the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah, McDonnell Douglas, we had a
Right.
site, and it was, I mean, networks. This is before routers were really popular, so we
Hmm.
used bridges and repeaters, and this really will be considered primitive equipment now to get the signals
Right.
across. But in those days, it was all we had. So basically, I went into a 40-plus year career of cybersecurity and IT operations with McDonnell Douglas and IBM. And Dennis actually went into the biggest fraud in American history at that point. It's something like $3 billion in today's money, oil recertification fraud, where the government was paying producers to drill for new oil in those
Yeah.
days. And they
Right.
were giving people more money as an incentive to drill for new oil. The problem was there was no chemical difference between the new oil and the old oil. So if you had the fraudulent certificates, then you could do it. So this was run by a guy, I think his name was Richard Sutton, and he was an Oklahoma oil man who got a 4-year sentence. He owned the Xanadu Hotel, I believe, in
Oh
island in the
yeah.
Caribbean. He was one of the first like real billionaires in those days. So that was, a big deal. He was crying in court when he got convicted. And what happened was Dennis's brother-in-law was arrested by the FBI. And Dennis, he had such a baby face, which allowed us to get away with a lot because we both looked so young, at that time. None of us could grow a mustache or a beard or anything. So the FBI comes there and they say, says, come on, kid, get out of here. He's going, just stay out of there. So Dennis told me he grabbed $60,000 cash out of the closet, flew to Europe for a year, and that's how he avoided ever getting caught. So in his whole career,
Oh
he
my God.
never got caught. My whole career, I never got caught, but I wouldn't even spit on the street after that because I
Right.
was so afraid
Well,
of it.
and
And
now the
actually,
statute of limitations for any of the phone freaking, all that's been
yeah,
like all that's
yeah,
long gone.
it's
Yeah.
glamorized. That's why
Right.
phishing is spelled with a PH,
Right.
right?
Because of the
Because
phone
of the
freaking.
phone freaking, yeah,
Right.
that we did way back in those days. Very colorful thing. Sometimes I regret even mentioning it when I speak because people see me years later and that's what they remember is
Well,
that
it's because they
particular
don't.
thing.
A lot of people in the audience don't understand it. They didn't even grow up with payphones. They didn't grow. You know what I mean? And so it's
Right.
all a story to them, right? but it was very real. I remember it.
Was to me. In fact,
Yeah,
it gave me the imposter syndrome for the rest of my career. I never knew if I was going to get walked out, the walk of shame. At
exactly.
McDonnell Douglas, I saw people get walked out for lying on their resume. In those
Right,
days, no computers. It would take a while to catch up. I have to
right.
call people and get back to. So I remember this one lady who was walked out so quick that she used to change from high heels into sneakers. Once she was
Wow,
there, and I watched him walk her out, and her high heels were still sitting on the desk,
wow. They got rid
and
of it
all her
right
stuff,
away.
and they boxed
Yeah.
it up. So for me, it was a very real thing, and it really affected how how I behaved in the way I was just like the model person. In fact, just so low key. But I got lucky. The lady that gave me my first job in the computer field, I actually went to an IBM trade school for a year, and I learned four
Mm,
languages. Fortran, COBOL, Basic, Assembler, and those aren't even around anymore, right? It's all C++,
right,
Python,
right.
blah, blah, blah. So anyway, after all of this year-long, 40-hour-a-week thing where I had to take a bus for 2 hours to get there, they gave me a bus pass and $200 a month, which didn't go far even in the, 1980. Um,
Right.
I figured I had to go back to school. So I went back to Orange Coast College in California, in Costa Mesa. I wound up working in a hotel in this really horrible job where I was folding towels and checking people in at the same time while I was going to school. I didn't have a car. I used to take my 10 speed and go to college and then go to the hotel and rain, and it was just a nightmare at times. But you got to persevere. That's where
Right.
your
Just
character
push it.
integrity get built
Right.
up. So I
Just
pushed it,
keep
as you're
pushing it.
saying. And one day I went and went to the employment assistance program for students there, which I would advise anyone who's looking to break into cybersecurity
100%. Yeah.
to go into your college, use those resources. In those days, they didn't have it online. They had index cards on the wall. And I saw one that just caught my eye for a computer job. I went in, she tested me out, kind of 3 interviews, and I got the job. So I went from working in this hotel and 100-degree heat, doing towels and running up and checking people in, night shift, 6 days a week. They kept it 6 hours a day, so I didn't get medical benefits. They really, had it
Wow.
rigged. And I wound up going to this beautiful job, and it was only 15 people in this company, but he was my best mentor really ever. That's why we do things through quantum
What was
motion
that
where
first company? What type of company was it?
it's called Infotech. It was a satellite
Infotech.
imaging company for making maps, and we had a big map showing, the different elevations and everything, and it was pretty
Cool.
successful. I was working
Yeah.
on a VAX 11780 and a PDP 11. Those were digital equipment corporations way before Microsoft. There was no PCs at that
Right.
time. So I wound up going to this 15-person company. She went to McDonnell Douglas and brought me in under her.
Right.
Uh, and that took about a couple of years from me starting at this 15-person company, her going and me going to McDonnell Douglas, which was a Fortune 50 company then. It was
Right.
huge.
Right.
So I went from a company with 15 people to 250,000 people, and she
Wow.
was the network director of the MD11 program, and then she went to the C17 program. So I became the network director of the MD11 program. And then when she left, I took over this $41 billion C17 program when I was only like 26, 27 years. I don't even know
Holy
why they would
crap.
give someone, yeah, it's crazy. I don't even know why anyone would do that, but
But hey,
I think,
nobody knew that stuff. The whole thing is you were a pioneer. You were one of the first ones. It's kind of like the people that are advancing in AI right now. Like nobody's done this before. So what makes it exciting is you can be self-taught and learn this stuff, and you're creating a path that just really hasn't been forged before.
yeah, I feel like Forrest Gump in a way, because you
Yeah.
know how he was just like bouncing over from thing to thing. I was in the phone phreaking thing, the
Yeah.
FBI. Then I was in like the first computers before the internet. Then I was on this big, military program. I actually
Cool.
was, my claim to fame was I was the first one to successfully cluster a digital equipment computers together, a couple of them. I wrote my own. I started as a coder and went in operations, which VP was telling me, why are you doing this? It's all grief and no glory. Stay in development. But my heart was in, the data centers, and it turned out to be a great thing for me because I really enjoyed that, not being in the background doing the coding, which I did use in my career, which everyone should learn a little about.
Yep.
So at
Yeah,
that point,
I still
it really
agree with
changed
that.
everything. Yeah, you
Yeah.
do.
Oh yeah. No, I think learning the coding languages is so critical. It's still the reason. Again, just like just like being taught in school what the capitals of all 50 states are. It's not about being able to recite the answer. It's about learning how the process is to learn that data, right? It's the same thing with coding. Like, to me, learning a coding languages teaches you how to think a certain way. And I think that is really critical.
Yeah, this was called, more structured programming, where it wasn't just, a bunch of spaghetti code, we used to call it. It
Right.
was really structured with, conditional statements, and you did a lot of documentation. So that's the good thing about the IBM trade school I went to. They really, had us on a mainframe in the 1980, to be able to work on a
Right.
mainframe was kind of crazy, as a young guy. But from there, it actually helped me. That became my claim to fame in the other situation. Like when I got laid off from McDonnell Douglas, they had a big problem when they laid off like half the people, and I took a package and left. But I couldn't get a job because I had all this supercomputer and mainframe experience and super
Which
minis.
wasn't
But
common. Which wasn't
yeah, now
common, right?
PCs were coming in. Well, it
Right.
was the only thing for a while, but then people wanted PC experience, even though it was
Right.
only a couple of years over. So I managed in like 1992, 93, when they first started to become more popular, to get into that. And because I had clustered the VAXs, I was the first really in that area in LA to cluster like Microsoft servers. So
Right.
that became my claim to fame. I would have
Right.
redundant servers that were clustered. If one went down, then the other would stay up. So it's funny because when I was at McDonnell Douglas, I was doing screenwriting. That I thought was going to be my career. I'd gone to NYU Film School, director school, all this.
Oh,
And
really?
I'd written a bunch of scripts. So I thought, that would be my way to go. So I actually
And you're
wrote a
in LA,
screenwriting.
so yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I met people. But I didn't have the personality for it. People might see me now and say, wow, you're like pretty extroverted and animated and all that. But then I was super shy, and
Yeah.
plus I had this fear that the FBI was going to grab me. So I
You
was like,
still had the
well,
freak
I
of
still
being
had
over
that for
your back.
10, even when I was at IBM.
Oh my gosh.
Every time I had to put in a resume, the
Oh,
FBI actually investigated me 3 times for my clearance levels. That's another thing
oh my
people don't
gosh, they
realize.
did. That's right.
Yeah, to
That's
get
right.
the
Every time
job.
you had the clearance levels, they would do a full FBI background.
Yeah, to work on the project, I had to do a pretty minimal one, which they
You
just
must have been
accepted.
scared to death.
I
And
was because
now but now you're older, and now you look back going, they wouldn't have done it. Like, come on.
right,
Like,
right. But if
right?
it's you, you think
But
differently,
if it's you, right. Well, because
right?
everything you're working for and you've developed could be gone, right? So
Yeah. Well, people
it's
make a full
amazing.
career out of their criminal background. A lot of them, I think, are kind of like posers and blowing up the situation. I was
Yeah.
really in the middle of it, and it
Right.
scared the hell out of me
Right.
because I left home when I was 18 and went in the military and all of this. And, I had no backup plan.
Right.
I was 2,500 miles away from my family in New York, the only one
Right.
out here. So if I had some kind of problem, no one was going to be able to help me. I had to do it all myself,
Yeah.
money, whatever I had to do. That's why I worked so hard, was there was
Is
no
that how you
backup
got to
plan.
LA? Is that how you got out there? Were you in
Yeah.
were you in the Marines or Army or
I was in the
Navy?
Air Force. Yeah.
Oh, in Air
Well,
Force.
I was
Okay.
in,
You
yeah,
got stationed up
March Air
there.
Force Base is in Riverside, and I wound up,
Right.
my friend, this guy Dennis, I was saying, that
Yeah.
taught me that brought the hacking thing to
Right.
California. His sister got married in California, and
Uh,
he moved out to stay with her. He invited us out. So I was like, this is great,
yeah. Oh,
compared to
yeah.
where I was living, this is
Right.
amazing. So I used
Yeah.
to go back and forth between the base and, hang out with them and everything. So that's how that all worked out.
That's
Plus
so
I was
cool.
really worried because I was like, calling from the Air Force Base too. And I was saying to myself,
Oh my gosh, that's
yeah, now
right.
that's another thing on top of it. It's a government thing, federal. I was like,
Oh,
oh,
you
here
must
I
have
was.
been
Is it?
scared. Yeah, you had to
Yeah, I
be scared to
was.
death. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I was really
Well,
worried
thank God
about
for
it.
statute of limitations. Like
Yeah, and
it's gone
no
now.
one would care now. It's kind of
No.
funny, and I see people that, like you say, lean into it. They talk about their big badass career and everything, but it's
Yeah,
so
they kind of
stupid.
brag about it, and that's kind of a
Yeah,
turnoff for me.
that's what
It's
I
like
hate is
don't
glamorizing this
yeah,
thing.
don't because there's still a real victim on the other end, even if it's because companies are still made of people. You know what I mean? So like
Yeah,
at the end, you're still hurting people. So
yeah, and
yeah.
also you got to look at it this way too. You hear about these big, rings that they make a few $1 million and everything, but
Mhm.
you don't see in the background the guy's driving around with a banana yellow, Ferrari, no income, boom, tax evasion. He's
Right.
caught. The neighbors will turn him in. Someone will turn him in. Or the fact that criminals turn on each other. They're like, hey,
Right. All the
it's an
time.
8-way split. Let's make it a 5-way split and
Right.
take out these three. We'll drop a dime on them, or we'll,
Right.
make them disappear.
Yeah.
And that's what this whole glamorization thing is such nonsense. People get caught, changes everything, ruins it for their whole family. But look at the career I had instead. I'm very proud of the
Mhm.
fact that,
Dude, you
I
were
could
at
hold my
like
head up.
IBM. You were at IBM, McDonnell Douglas. Now you're involved in quantum. Like, those are big deals. All of those are individual career arcs, and you've done three
Crazy,
of them.
right?
Yeah,
Like
it's
Forrest
crazy.
Gump.
I know, it's
And the
crazy.
people that I met, I worked on
Yeah,
2 consulting projects between my McDonnell Douglas
phenomenal.
job and actually I worked for a company called Candle that got bought by IBM. So there
Mm.
I had to put in another resume, to protect my job when they bought the company. I was like, oh,
Ah,
here we go again,
here
another
we go
background
again.
check. Yeah. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
the FBI, the second background check, they actually made phone calls. The third one, they went back to Astoria and were interviewing
Oh,
people about me like 10 years after I had left home. And were
what?
asking,
Oh,
yeah. And they actually were like walking into people's houses and asking about me. So anyone that
jeez,
thinks
that's
it
brilliant.
ends, it doesn't. I passed. I had a great clearance, but as I went up to be like a network director, your clearances have to go higher and higher and
It
stuff
just
like
shows you
that. So
you gotta not burn bridges. You gotta in all the factors of your life because you don't know when what you did 10 years ago is going to pop up and hurt you today.
exactly.
You know,
And
there's a lot of life lessons in there.
yeah, you got to get a good mentor. My mentor happened to
Yeah,
be this guy, Dennis Rooney, who was
100%.
my best friend at that time, but he was a kid too. He
Yeah.
didn't realize what he was doing. He wound up having this crazy career. He just passed away, like I said. He was very
Mm,
proud of the things he had done, actually, over the years, because he was like the Forrest Gump of
right.
these con things too, so
Yeah.
he saw all these big people and they met people there. But with me, I strayed on the
Unbelievable.
straight and narrow. And the 2 consulting projects I did, one was Unical headquarters in LA, which was one of if it wasn't the tallest building in downtown LA, it was one of the few tallest buildings. And we converted that out, and Unical left, and it became like a big movie studio conversion down there, a very famous project. Second was
Wow.
Kaiser Permanente. I
Oh,
worked
yeah.
on this call center in 1993, 94 with such a
Wow. As
great
they were just
group.
growing into this mammoth, this behemoth.
Yeah, they kind of had just invented the VRUs, which is dial
Mhm.
one, for patients, dial
Right.
two for, so I actually was programming them, at that time. And you just do a 1-time, 2-time deal, and then move
Yeah.
on, record that and setting up Lotus notes. And it was a great crew of people, but it was so futuristic that they filmed Starship Troopers there. So I got to see them
Really.
filming part of that there because the architecture for Kaiser Permanente, it was in Baldwin Park. If anyone ever goes by it, still looks amazing, And the second one was Larry Flint versus the U.S.
Oh, yeah.
With Woody Harrelson. I
Yep.
got to watch Woody Harrelson, them running down the hospital hallway with him on a gurney, after he got shot as Larry Flint. So you never know where you're going to be. So those are two very famous projects. But I did kind of get lucky with the way that the company I was with, they were the first to really do IBM mainframe monitoring. And IBM didn't want to start a whole division, to do that. So they bought the company. And it was a privately owned company, and the owner of the company became fabulously wealthy,
Sure.
And he also was in Digital Island, one of the first people that you talk about cloud now, right?
Right. So
In
back then
1997 or so, we started doing what was called co-location. Now you call it cloud, but it was called co-location there. So I had to move all our data center stuff into another
different
facility
location,
like Digital Island. Yeah. And then when the security became a problem, I had to pull it all back. So two of my projects were just moving it out and moving it back in. So I was actually, again, on the cutting edge of VMware and virtualization. And I had 42 offices I managed worldwide with like up to 50 people as my report. Yeah, it was kind of a crazy,
that's
situation. You don't think about it when you're in it,
right.
But,
you're just working, you're busy, right?
Yeah. And I loved that part of it. I didn't like the politics, but, as I moved up higher and higher, that became a part of it. Right now I'm an executive. I'm on the board of Quantum Emotion, the parent company. I'm the COO. We started a subsidiary in America.
Let's talk about that. So let's talk about quantum. Explain for a small business owner, right? Why, like, people talk about quantum, and basically quantum are certain. It's a type of computer that basically thinks different processes differently than traditional computers. It can break all of our standard encryption, which changes everything, right? And people always say it's about still 10 years away, but explain it, break it down to us simply for like a small, mid-sized business owner. Like, why do they need to pay attention to this now and start to get prepared? Because I believe they do. So walk us through kind of what it is, what your company is doing, what you see happening.
Okay, the first thing is a small to mid-sized business. They should literally focus on cybersecurity fundamentals right now.
100%. Right.
Because so many of them they're all like a startup, they're putting all their money in growth, right? Growth, sales, revenue. Very little will go into what they consider overhead, which is cybersecurity. So my advice to them is definitely focus on that. The government is way ahead of the game on this. There was HR 7535 in December of 2022 that passed, which was a House resolution that became a law, the Quantum Computer Cybersecurity Preparedness Act. So people aren't aware of this, but the government has been preparing for over 3.5 years for the day that you're talking about. Q Day, they call it, where the quantum computers can break the encryption. And people had said, it was 20 years away. When I talked about it a couple of years ago, people were saying, oh, it's science fiction. Last year, they were saying, well, it's 10, 20 years away. Now they're coming to me and saying, we need what you have. Okay. And when you go talk about encryption and certificates like the X.509 certificates, encryption, stuff like that is the most automated, like, boring things that most people don't really pay attention to because they're not involved behind the scenes, right?
Right.
So with the quantum computers,
there's a very real effect of why you have to pay attention to that, right? Because everything that we have, every lock, every system, the passwords, our banking systems, our e-commerce, like everything is encrypted, right, a certain way. And it's a math problem, basically. And quantum breaks that, for lack of a completely non-technical explanation. But that's basically what it does, right? It's able to cut through all of it.
Yeah, I advise anyone who has Apple TV Plus to see Prime Target. Okay, they had one season, very successful. It was the #1 show for a while about a math genius who was looking for what he called, this prime finder that would be able to find all the prime numbers encryption, when it's math based, okay, is basically two very large prime numbers times each other. That creates a 600 character string, of encryption that makes it hard to break. Okay. So the problem is these quantum computers, as they're developing, they go through pattern recognition and math problems like a hot knife through butter. Google announced that
Right.
they had solved a math problem that would take a supercomputer 100 years. It would solve it in 8 hours. And it's
Right.
constantly getting better. IBM started the IBM Starling computer to take the place of their System 2 quantum
Mm-hmm.
computer, which right now has to be cooled in like a cooled environment, sort of like the old data centers. When I was first
Right.
in there, you'd go in there with a sweater and people would
Right.
even bring gloves, it was that
Right.
cold. Now you don't need all that. You need it to be cool, but not freezing. Well, this quantum computer, is very susceptible to heat and also other environmental factors, uh,
Mm-hmm.
magnetic pulses can throw it off. So many factors that they're trying to normalize. So IBM is putting $30 billion into the Starling project, which in 3 years, now less than 3 years because they announced it last year, is going to be 20,000 times faster than their System 2.
Wow.
That could solve a problem in hours and minutes. So a lot of people,
Unbelievable.
that used to say it was science fiction, that it's going to take a long time. Now they're changing their tune. They're kind of backtracking. There's many famous cases of that. But my point is, why do you need the quantum computers to be the reason to go over to some kind of technology like we have? It's just better. It's
Mm-hmm.
uncrackable, crackable encryption. The attack vector is the entropy or key generation areas, right? If you're using the math based, which is called PRNG, pseudo random number generation, then that's what these quantum computers will be able to attack, and that's what
And what does
the,
quantum emotion product do? What the quantum random number generator? What does that do?
yeah, that's our base, of everything. We have a whole suite of products now that do everything. The random number generation thing, it's only like a $3 to $5 billion, industry. So it's not that big a deal in certain ways. That's couch change for like Microsoft and Google, and
Mm-hmm.
the effect is way out of proportion to the amount of money that it'll bring in. But as the
Right.
seed of all of our rest of our products, that's where our potential is unlimited with chips and stuff
Right.
that can sit on the same board as a quantum chip. And where
Yeah.
we come in is we have the patented technology for a very, very famous experiment in 1984 called quantum tunneling that
Mm-hmm.
won the Nobel Prize in Physics just
Right.
last year. So 1984 to 2025, right? 41 years later, they win the prize for this quantum tunneling experiments. And our technology is based on, those seeds that they had generated with their research all the way back then as a
Wow.
technology. So we've actually refined it because there's different molecular particles, right? There's photons and electrons. Photons, a lot of people went in that direction. It's not a new technology, been around 25 plus years.
Right.
But the difficulty is in miniaturizing. With the photons, they've always needed an optical device. They're trying to work around that. So you can't
Right.
miniaturize, it's slower. With ours, we use a thing called electron tunneling, which can absolutely be miniaturized, put on a
Right.
chip, PCI board, and is magnitudes of order faster, than what they were
Ah.
doing with the photon technology. So right now we're kind of what I call the mouse that roared. We're
Yeah.
the we're this tiny company that actually is the full circle of cybersecurity, based on seed generation all the way through the chips and the VPN and all these other products that we have that the rest of the world is going to be catching up. So
Right. So now, who is it? You don't have. Well, who are your competitors? Are there any?
yeah,
Like,
there's
is
a few. ID
Microsoft get in?
Quantique is actually the original
Okay.
one,
Okay.
where they did the photonics and everything. They're
Mm-hmm.
pretty famous and they focused on certain industries. The thing is, with us, we can be in any industry. We're in
Right.
energy. We just had the world's first quantum safe wallet for Bitcoin.
Very
and
cool.
crypto. We also are in healthcare. We're the provider for a company called Greybox in
Yeah.
Canada that I think is revolutionizing telehealth, because actually it's sad to me. My mom is in assisted living. She's 86.
Right.
And telehealth right now is just like a Zoom call, So
Right.
either the doctor's there or it's a 3-minute Zoom call. How you
Right.
doing? Are you taking your med? She can't really, get to the heart of the problem. This company, Greybox, is actually using our platform for their security, but they can monitor any kind of device, whether it's a EKG machine, whether it's oxygen machines, all the FDA regulated stuff, and they monitor it 75 7 by 24 and send out alerts, based on the
Oh.
patient not even doing anything, right? But on top of that, they also do the Aura Ring, the Apple
Ah,
Watch,
okay.
all
Oh
these
yeah. So they
wellness
take
things
in
too.
all of the nodes, all of the alerts from regular, all of the biometrics that a body goes through during the day, and they can capture that, spot any outliers, things like that, and alert them proactively.
Right. It's very easy for the
That's
patient
very
too.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they're wearing an Apple Watch, you can monitor their pulse, their
Yeah, that's
sleep,
cool.
all the
Yeah.
whatever it's set up for. So they have a dashboard, and the caregiver can just monitor, all of their patients, and then set alerts based on these different devices, because they're device agnostic. They'll do anything. So I
That's so
really,
cool.
yeah, I see a lot of revolutionary things in all of these different fields that we're in, where it's not just our technology, it's changing the world. It's these other technologies that we're a part of too. So it's
So
very
when you guys sell
satisfactory.
into a company, do you sell the chip? Do you sell the encryption behind their product? What is it that you're selling them? Like
Yeah,
you've
so
got the
that's the
patent
beautiful
on it.
thing. Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
beautiful thing is we have hardware, software services
Ah,
that
okay, cool.
people can use any piece that they want to fit in. Now, the big problem right now is when you talk about encryption and you talk about the PRNG, the math-based um, pseudo-random number generation. We're QRNG, which is
Hmm.
not math-based. It's all in the quantum world. So it's quantum versus quantum, and it's
Hmm.
pure what they call randomness. So there's no patterns that a quantum computer can focus in on. They
Right.
could just go for infinity trying to solve
Right.
these, encryptions. And with any other kind of multi-factor authentication or any of your typical controls, like, logging you out after 5 bad tries or whatever, it literally becomes impossible to be
Right.
able to crack these. So what we can provide at the lowest level is the seed generation through this random number generation through the quantum QRNG that actually becomes the seed that sets up the keys. Keys are really the key to encryption. It's not to be redundant about a key to key, but if you could imagine, I could simply, give you a mental picture of what the way it is basically our technology will push electrons into a barricade. It's called a junction. When it comes through the barricade, it's very random, and you can never tell what, the amount of electrons are going to get through. So it's going to be a completely random number that generates zeros and ones. And then
Right.
from there, it's processed into all these other characters that, you know, turned it into, perfect encryption. So there's really two steps to it, but it's very different from a prime number versus a prime number or some kind of
Right.
clock setting on a
Which makes it
system that
impossible
could
to
be
crack. Yeah.
impossible to crack. So we're ahead of the game with quantum versus quantum. And the beautiful thing is, we also can back level into RSA ECC the existing encryption, so a company can pull us in without tearing out everything they have as a bridge to,
That's
since this is
important. Right.
since this is
That's really
cybersecurity
important.
podcast, we could talk about the four NIST approved post quantum cryptography algorithms. That's kind of
Right.
the holy grail. And you talked about the government. Well, the government NIST has been looking at this since 2016. They're on 10 years
Right.
now, and they've only got 4 approved. So you can see how
Right.
intense, that is. So that if we are bundled with a PQC, post quantum encryption, and we're pulled in as the seed or the key generator, the entropy, then that's a pure stack of quantum safe algorithm with the QRNG. Whereas the weakness I see is, even if you have PQC, those 4 algorithms, then you're still using the PRNG. Not to get into all these acronyms and throw people off, but
No, but
there's
it
Achilles
all has
heel.
to do with security and the encryption piece, and actually in a post quantum world being able to keep things secure. Right. That's what this is all about.
Absolutely. But you can do it now too. Why not
Right.
get the best right now? But that's why
So
I recommended
why
Prime
is-
Target too.
So
This Apple thing, it's all about
my-
math and
Right.
all the encryptions.
My view is I've got to think somebody like Apple or Google or Microsoft is going to want this technology. Like, why would they not buy you guys and roll it out across everything? Is it because the threat actors are really just honing in on AI right now and they're not addressing quantum yet because it's not?
Well, I can't talk about
democratized
what
yet?
is. Yeah, I can't really talk about what's going on, stuff like that. I'm on a public
Right.
board, We're on the New
Of
York
course,
Stock
yeah, yeah.
Exchange now too,
Right.
which was a big lift.
Okay.
New
Yeah,
York
you're
Stock
publicly
Exchange
traded.
American,
Okay,
yeah. So but the thing is, my vision is, forget acquisitions or whatever. This problem is so big,
I know.
right? That even
that's
if
why I would think one of the big guys want this,
well,
like they would.
if all of our competitors and us got together, we still are so smart, we couldn't level up and do it. That's where I envision, not being acquired or doing licensing and stuff in the
Right.
future would be the way to go. That way, it would be sort of like the Y2K initiative,
Right.
which is, unfortunately, people are saying Y2K was a dud. It was a scare tactic. People made a fortune. Well, I worked for 5 years off and on that
Right.
project. And that's why it was a dud, because it was a $500 billion worldwide effort between every government, every
Right.
military, businesses around the world to make it a non-event. But younger people who may listen to the wrong, people about this say, that was nothing. It's a nothing burger. They don't realize the effort that went into it.
I was just going to say, I think it was a nothing burger because it was a huge success. Like, because
exactly.
all of the defense and adjustments and corrections that went into place so that when midnight came, it didn't have the impact, right?
Oh, I was in the data center, our headquarters in LA, monitoring Malaysia, Australia, all our data centers around the world. As they hit, and we had our whole staff on December 31st, 1999. None of us could go out to New Year's Eve celebration. We were all in the data center, all hands on deck, like 50, 60 people in one data center.
Isn't that the story of cybersecurity? It's like when you're doing it right, it's a dud. Like, that's the whole point. And when you're doing it right, there's silence. There's nothing bad that happens. That's the whole point, right?
Yeah, we made it look too easy.
Yeah.
Right? It's always, if you're too smooth, right? People don't appreciate it. It's the person that complains that's, oh, this was so hard. Oh, I barely made, they get all the credit for the effort they put out. But if someone makes it look too easy, then, you get a Y2K situation, which 25 years later, people say was nothing. Look at what we had in the year 2000. Businesses had computers for sure, but there was no Facebook. There was no YouTube. There was none of Apple hadn't even put out the iPhone yet. There was no online banking. There was no stock trading online. So 26 years later, it's just an exponential leap from where society was compared to then. We're fully digital compared to then. We were like, kind of thinking we were, oh, wow, we're so advanced. Look how dumb they were in the 80s or how far behind they were. Now we look at the 90s and say, man, that was really primitive,
Archaic. Yeah, it was very primitive.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and like I said, it's
you do a
different.
lot of mentoring with people trying
Mhm.
to break into cybersecurity, and that's great. Um, what are some of the things that you're seeing about people that are trying to break in? Um, we talk about this not very often on the show, but it is something that always interests me because part of me is like, well, cybersecurity isn't really it's not really an entry level job. It is essentially the policing of the technology. You need the experience in the technologies. You need the experience in the organizations to know what in order to protect the people behind using it. But there are paths to directly go straight in. Obviously, now there's curriculums, there's degrees, there's all of this. Um, how are you guiding people? Like, what things are you seeing? What advice do you have to young people trying to break in?
One of the things that really frustrates me is LinkedIn. There's a lot of doomsayers on there that,
Mm,
I've got 20 years experience and there's no jobs out there, right?
right,
And they just kill a lot of people's, um, desire to get
anxiety.
in or their
Right.
motivation. Let me give a quick, little, you know, how should I put it? Little lesson right now on how
Yeah.
I do it. As a hiring manager, I hired dozens of people. Unfortunately, I had to fire dozens of people over the years too, which was
Yeah.
very
That's part of
heartbreaking
it.
to me when we
Right.
had the layoffs after the dot-com boom and
Mm-hmm.
mergers and acquisitions and everything. But as a hiring manager, there's three pillars that you're looking for when you interview someone. It's experience, that's number one. Number two is advanced education like college. Number three, certifications. Okay.
Right.
I had so many certifications in the past that were dead, like Novell, like Lotus, like
Yeah.
Windows and NT. And, so I really wasn't a big person on certifications, but the ones now have legs.
Right.
Okay. If you go to Glassdoor and look for CISSP, right,
Mm-hmm.
or Security Plus, you'll get tons of hits if you just put in that string, right, of people that are looking for that qualification. So,
Yep.
to all the naysayers, anyone that's looking at for a job, all you need is one job. Okay.
Right.
It may be the worst time in history. And believe me, it doesn't compare to 1980 when I was looking for a
Right.
job, when
Yeah.
there was all like
Or
mainframes and
2008. In
programmers.
2008, when the entire
Yeah.
economy,
Yeah.
trillions of
Went
dollars
down
evaporated.
yeah,
Right.
the recession, right? That
Right.
hit
Yes.
real estate, that hit everything. So,
Yeah.
okay, just have that mind frame. All you need is one job. Okay.
Right.
The second thing is if you don't have the experience, okay, and you don't have the college, that could be things that people pick at. Okay. So
Right.
keep trying to go to college if you can. That's very helpful. Do it part time.
Mm-hmm.
Expensive, but my route was community college. I wound
Mm-hmm.
up eventually getting an MBA. It took me like 30 years to do it, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it
it's
still can be done. Yeah.
yeah, it can be done. So basically, if you don't have the experience in education, go for the certifications. Okay. Right now, Security Plus is big for entry
Mm-hmm.
level, which is CompTIA, and
Right.
ISC2 has what I consider their CompTIA Security Plus killer, which is a CC. Okay, so if you have
Mm-hmm.
absolutely no money at all, ISC2 is giving free certified in cybersecurity CC exam and training. Okay, for
There you
who knows
go.
how long it'll last? They'll give it to
Right.
you for a year before it expires. So
Yep.
sign up for that, and that would also help if you're going for the Security Plus, because once you pass the
Absolutely.
CC, they're very similar.
Right.
Okay, but the best advice is keep a good mindset. Don't listen to people that don't know what they're talking about. I've seen people have 4-year degree in cybersecurity get talked out of it by their family who's saying, "Oh,
Right.
just give up." You know,
Right.
it's too
It's
hard to
terrible.
get in. I've seen
Right.
there's no jobs, right? Well, you were saying about an entry level. There are still entry level jobs, help desk, the SOC,
Right.
um, security operations centers, right?
Yeah.
That you will go in there and you'll be monitoring more than, you know, implementing. But if you have good
Right.
coding skills too, and you go in a situation like that, my way of promoting people was usually I take people from the help desk, I'd make them a junior sysadmin,
Exactly.
on Linux or on Windows machines because they have some kind of experience, and then bring them up. And eventually, the pyramid goes like this in operations. It's SOC and help desk, and then above that's the junior sysadmin. Then eventually you get to the network engineers, senior network engineers. At the top of that pyramid is the network architects. Okay,
Right.
those are the guys that are banging, making the most money. There's
Right.
certifications for all of those things. You mentioned my ISC2 certifications, and why
Yeah.
did I
You
do
have.
that?
Well, you were only
Because
11 people on the planet that do that. So that is a lot. That's a huge achievement.
thanks. And I think for people that are going into an interview, you want to make yourself as bulletproof as possible. And the
Right.
reason I even started on the certifications because I had had so many that just they were in drawers and never looked at them. I didn't even know where they were for dead languages. And
Yeah.
but now they're taken to be really important by hiring managers. They weight these things.
Right.
So, no matter what anyone says, getting a certification that will give you a leg up from someone that doesn't have it. So, if you're all things are equal and you have a certification, but what was my motivation? First of all, I have a big ego, right? And I had helped Ian Neal, who is a very famous author. He's done Security Plus and
Yep.
Network A Plus. He asked me to be a technical editor on his Security Plus 702 um, book, which I saw the blood, sweat, and tears he put into it.
That
It's
he put
28
in.
domains.
Right.
In encryption, he gave great write-ups on encryption, which is like literally the weak point of most everybody. So
Right.
anyway, I had written an 800-page book on cybersecurity myself that was general
Hmm.
cybersecurity. So anyway, someone sneered at me because they had a CISSP
Hmm.
and I didn't have anything. They said my cybersecurity skills were probably stale. So that kind of gave me a incentive, that
That's all it
okay,
takes usually is somebody to just sneer at you. And you're like, all right,
yeah, yeah.
game on.
Some
I'll
people
get it.
Yeah, some people are motivated by, uh, you know, praise. Other people are motivated by scorn and
Right.
sneering at you. Well, I happen to be one of those people. Oh, yeah, I can't do it. So
Right.
I got the CISSP. Then I started to say, well, I did a lot of architecture work. How hard would that be? And I got that very quickly. And then the management I had down because I'd done management all those years with recovery plans and all kinds
Yeah.
of stuff like that with disaster recoveries. I'd managed data centers, so I started to just accumulate them. So I, as I was going, I was like, I think I could do this in 6 months, and I just charted it out. I was working full time. I traveled to Italy, Montreal, New York, Las Vegas for the convention. And when I went to the ISC2 convention, one of the VPs said, "Oh yeah, only 10 people in the world have ever done this." I was like, "Wow, I'm only like 4 away, 5 away."
Right.
So that in the next few months, so from June 10th to December 7th of 2024, I got 11 certifications. I
That's
also got CISM
incredible.
and I got blockchain too, because I'm very into crypto and
Right.
blockchain technology. One of my friends, David Carlson, he's a UCI, University of Cal Irvine professor in blockchain. So we'd sit around talking all the time. I was like, wow, it's a good certification to get.
Yeah.
But for people trying to get in there, don't listen to people that say, "Oh, it's all this experience. It's education. Who needs it?
Right.
And certification." Trust me, there's people on LinkedIn that have 150,000 followers. They can't even hold a job. You
Yeah.
know, I've only got
Yep.
11,000. People. I only had 7,000 until ISC2 did that article on me. Suddenly, I
Right.
got like 4,000 more followers. But there's
Yeah.
people out there that are just giving the bad advice. But really, as a hiring
No,
manager,
I
there's
agree.
three pillars: experience, education, and certification. If you don't have the experience, like I didn't have the experience, so what did I do? I went back to college. I kept
Right.
looking for an entry
Focus on the
level
other two.
job.
Right.
Yeah, it was a lot better than folding sheets and towels and
Yeah.
110-degree heat and checking
Right.
people in this little. hotel on Harbor Boulevard. It was just,
Yeah.
you gotta listen to your own heart, really. Are you going to be happy if you give up because someone said there's no
Right.
jobs? What do they get out of it though on LinkedIn, saying, oh, it's the worst time ever?
Yeah. I don't
The
know.
best time to be in cybersecurity was 10 years ago, right? The second best time is now and
Right.
tomorrow, and
Right.
whenever you can get in. So if you want to
That's a
have a
great
long
point.
career that's, you know,
It's always
economically,
cyclical too. It's always
or
cyclical. Yeah. I mean, the best time to be in anything, people can always talk or point to a bull run that happened, but you still have to, like, right now is still the best time to be in it because we don't know when the next bull run's going to happen, and you need to be ready for it when it happens.
Yep.
So,
Well, another thing is to join in with like-minded people. Okay. If you
oh
want to be
yeah,
a doctor, you hang out with people that want to be doctors. A lawyer, you
right,
hang out with people that want to be a baseball player. You hang
yeah,
out with ball players, bodybuilders, you go to the gym. That's
yeah,
where all the
that's
knowledge
exactly
is,
right.
right? Well, if you
Right,
want to go in cybersecurity, join, through these meetups,
right,
cybersecurity groups. You'll find people who are actually motivated, like OWASP, ISC2, ISACA,
yep,
that's where you meet the people. Another thing is if you're looking for a job, have a business card,
right,
where if like with me, after I left IBM, I was like looking to do consulting. So I joined the Chamber of Commerce. You don't have to be a big company to join the Chamber of Commerce. Their bread and butter
yep,
is just individual businesses and mom and pops. It's
yep,
really cheap. It's like 600 a year. What does
right,
that do? You get to go to network with people that if you walked in off the street and gave you a resume, they wouldn't give you the time of day. They're too busy. But if
right.
you're in a relaxed environment and you're a good person and you can talk,
You're
and they see the
interested in
passion,
them, right? That's exactly
yeah,
right.
you happen to click. I mean, that's how I've seen so many relationships happen. Networking is the fourth pillar, not
Yes.
for a hiring manager, though that helped me by
No,
the
but to
fact,
open the door for the opportunity to get to a hiring manager, networking is key.
absolutely. Yeah, I
You know?
give that advice all the time.
Yeah.
I joined the ISC2 SoCal Inland Empire chapter. It just started last year. This guy, Neo Pardo, is the president. I met him at the Security Congress, and he said, "Yeah, I'm trying to start this chapter," and he did it. It's like you have to move
That's cool.
mountains to do something like
Right.
that. And then it became the largest growing chapter in the world. Why? Because a lot of the other chapters just want people in the region, and they're
Right.
kind of not doing too many meetings and this and that. But we're in this chapter international. We have people from all over the world: Africa,
See,
England,
that's great. That's
Italy,
fantastic.
anywhere in the
And you're
United
really
States.
active. Yeah, you're really active. I see your posts and your comments on it all the time.
Yeah, well, right now I had shoulder surgery, so I haven't. You see the sling I'm wearing. I haven't
Yeah.
really been as active lately. I've been working. That took a lot of my time.
Right.
We just opened a new development office in Temecula,
Oh,
California.
cool.
So I've been
Yeah.
down there opening that up and finding the office and setting it up. We just bought another company that actually completes the holy grail of
Ah.
cybersecurity defense, which most people don't have. The company we bought, the person that was head of that company, he was in the defense industry for 10 to 15 years.
Oh, great.
And one of the things people don't realize with encryption is that in volatile memory, RAM memory, there's a brief period where the encryption is decrypted, and
Mm.
that's where it's an attack vector.
Right.
If it's not done right, it'll be decrypted, and nanoseconds are actually a lot of time to a computer, right? So anyway,
Right.
he had come up with a way to keep it encrypted throughout its journey
Throughout
all
the
the way through.
yeah, throughout the journey.
Yes,
That's
so
great.
we bought his company and brought him on. So he started. He's going to be the head of this office in Temecula under our subsidiary Quantum of Motion America. So I'm very excited about that. When I talk about completing the circle, we start off with this base product. Our CEO is brilliant. He's got a PhD, two masters, MBA, speaks 5 languages, and he's
Wow.
also the nicest, most democratic person in the world. He
Yeah.
lets us all talk and everything. So he, in the last 5 years, when he came in, has really, set the company up for pure success. We're going for the FIPS 140-3 NIST, the validation through there and the testing and all of that. So people think it's like too slow sometimes, the progress, but that's why I joined from IBM. I'm kind of a coattail guy. I joined
Right.
on the coattails of what they've been doing for many years, with all the
Yeah.
research and all of that. So he brought me in as an advisor and then elevated me to the board. And then now I became the COO of our American
Phenomenal.
affiliate. Yeah. So that's what people need is a CEO with vision. Actually, when I was
Yeah.
at RSA a couple of years ago, keynote speaker had said there's a big disconnect on the boards with the people in cybersecurity. You have to go through a CIO who garbles the communication or may keep it down because they want to hide stuff that they're having problems and this and that. So he elevated me a couple of years ago when they were just talking about it. Now it's almost becoming you're going to have direct communication with someone on your board who has cybersecurity experience. So anyone
Absolutely.
out there who wants the long, long career, okay, there's no ceiling there. You can eventually get to the board. You're going to be a
Right.
very important player on the board of
Absolutely.
directors of a company because of your cybersecurity experience. So, you can stay as technical as you want. That's one of the things I didn't like about being a big company. They want you to be a people manager. They move you all over the place. And I
Right.
did that. But then I said, last 20 years, I'm all technical now again, because that's what really was my passion. So if you want to stay technical, you can actually elevate over all the managers eventually and become an executive and become, on the board or be the board whisperer, where they
Yeah.
have you report directly to them. So the future is unlimited for anybody in cybersecurity, and
I
anyone who,
love it.
who gets talked out of it, and also another thing is people are giving up their careers in HR. I've seen in healthcare to
Hmm.
go into cybersecurity and work at a help desk for 20 bucks an hour.
Yeah, I've
That's
seen
not
that.
where I would advise them. I'd advise them to just stay what they're doing, become a hybrid. Don't
Right.
give up a lucrative career that took you 15 years to develop. Instead, be the go-to person, in HR who knows cybersecurity too,
Right.
because they're starting to sort of migrate IT and cybersecurity teams away from this classified, IP and secure information and confidential information. Because you see, like the big thing that happened in Massachusetts, where this young, like low level, he wasn't even an officer, had the biggest break back east and giving up government secrets. Why? Because
Right.
he knew how to connect people up,
Right.
that were skilled in other areas, but they're like, oh, I don't know how to, log in people or do admin work. So if you can learn cybersecurity and add it to your stack, then you're going to be much more valuable than someone just going over and starting at a SOC and just leaving that beyond. So that's my other piece of advice too for people that are thinking
Absolutely.
get into cybersecurity. Become a hybrid. Emphasize to your executives and the people above you, your boss, that you want to become the cybersecurity expert in your group.
Hmm.
If that's your passion, there's people
Right.
that get into cybersecurity because they're like, oh, it's lucrative and, it's this and that. And then they
Yeah,
start
then it's
struggling
like
and
any career, and they're getting into it for the wrong reasons, right?
exactly.
If you get into it because you're passionate about it, you will get very good at it, and the money will come. You can't just go after the money, no matter what it is, whether it's law, medicine, whatever, because you're really not going to get very good at it. You're not going to like people will see through it. Right? Yeah. Right. Yep. What is absolutely. Yep. John, thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, I got to tell you, we will have links to your LinkedIn. We encourage everybody to follow you. The information that you share is brilliant. We'll have links to your books. You also have the hacker book, Kick Hackers to the Curb. And you've got we'll have the links to the Quantum of Emotion. Check them out. Thank you so much for catching up with us and being such a great supporter. Yeah, look, yeah, no, we definitely will. I would love to have you on a panel too. I've been putting together several panels of like people from different expertise, and you'd be great on a panel. So I will be in touch very soon. Yeah, yeah, right. I would love to set that up. I think that would be a great discussion. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like when. Right. Because it keeps speeding up. Yeah. Like it's easy to dismiss something people don't fully understand. So it is going to, yeah, completely, just as AI has. So yeah, I agree. And no one's really, yeah, yeah. That's where I think it's happening a lot sooner than people realize. Right, right. Unbelievable. I was just gonna say, well, we'll catch up and we'll do it again because there's gonna be a lot more developments on this. So we we will have you back again, and it'll be very soon. I promise you. Thanks. Really wonderful. Yeah, really fun. I really love writing them, and I'm working on my third one. So yeah, yeah, it's really fun. Yeah, thank you so much, buddy. All right, man. Take care of yourself. We will talk again soon, and I mean that. It won't be several years. I know we tried to do it about like a year ago, and I just got busy and I chased a lot of squirrels. So I will hone down. We will get together again very soon. Thanks, buddy. Take care of yourself, man. All right, man. See ya. Bye.